Fren slipped through the Cantina's crowd, her ears flicking at every voice and clatter. The station's atmosphere was heavy with noise, laughter, the hum of machinery, the clink of glasses. But her eyes were locked on one table. Ramira. Her sister sat draped over a chair, sunshine yellow fur glowing softly under the dim lights, her elegant snout tilted toward Tinle, their black-furred friend. They lounged without a care, sipping from sticker-covered canisters, their laughter rolling like wind chimes through the haze. Fren smirked. She'd been right to spread the little lie that she was back on Earth for a while. The surprise on their faces would be worth every bit of the trickery. She ducked her head, weaving between tables, her civilian clothes brushing too soft, too loose against her frame. Without the weight of her XC-1 Lancer rifle slung across her back, she felt incomplete, vulnerable. Even her pistol, snug in its alien gear holster against her chest, felt like a toy. But all that faded as she closed in. Looping wide, Fren circled behind the table and struck. Her fingers shot forward, digging into Ramira's delicate sides. Her sister shrieked, eyes wide, fur exploding in a panicked puff as Fren's hands worked mercilessly into her ribs. "Hello, sister," Fren bellowed with a grin, dragging Ramira into a crushing embrace and plastering kisses across her cheeks and snout. Ramira's legs kicked wildly, paws batting at Fren's arms, but Fren was a rock, solid, unyielding, grinning like a lunatic. The Cantina turned. Conversations paused. Some onlookers chuckled behind their hands. Others shook their heads in amused exasperation. Tinle leaned away smoothly, one eyebrow raised, sliding her drink safely out of the danger zone. Bren, get off me," Ramira wailed, twisting in vain. "I've missed you so much," Fren beamed, easily lifting her sister off the ground and spinning her in a tight circle. Ramira's feet kicked the air, brushing Tinle's ears as she ducked with practiced ease. "You're freaking huge," Ramira gasped, breathless, her eyes squinting shut against the flurry of kisses. "What have the humans been feeding you?" Tinle murmured, her sharp eyes sweeping over Fren's hulking frame. The difference was startling. Fren was nearly 3 inches taller than when she'd left, and her body was carved with muscle, thick and rugged beneath her fur. Ramira, by contrast, was still the picture of light beauty, graceful, athletic, and hopelessly delicate. Fren finally lowered her sister, stepping back with hands on hips, eyes bright with laughter. "I bet you're giving all the men on this station trouble, huh?" Ramira sputtered, cheeks flushed. Tinle, behind her, nodded with a smirk. "And you?" Fren asked, raising a brow. "I thought you were down on Earth for training." "I was," Fren replied, folding her arms. Her biceps bulged under her fur, making Ramira's jaw drop. "Had to come up here to give a report. Figured I'd surprise my darling sister." Ramira's paws darted forward, squeezing Fren's arm in astonishment. "Holy cow," she whispered. "Look at you. You're stuffed full of muscle." Tinle snorted, sipping from her canister. "You should have seen her practicing human slang. But yeah, her muscles are radical." Ramira squeezed Fren's bicep again, eyes wide. "It's like you stuffed apples under your skin." Tinle tilted her head, amused. "Pretty sure if she squats down, those pants are going to explode." "They're not going to explode," Fren said. tugging at the tactical lounge pants. They've got stretch woven into the cotton. "Wah!" Ramira exclaimed, pawing at Friend's chest now. "Did the humans give you these too?" Friend blinked, caught off guard. "Huh. Number, that's just training. And, maybe the chow. Humans eat a lot of fatty foods." "My pal shouldn't have cheese," Tinley murmured with a grin. "You should have seen some of the boys after they discovered poutine. 10 of them had to go on calorie restriction." Friend swatted her sister's curious paws away as they moved to her abdomen. "Hey, what do you mean the others are trying to be appealing?" Tinley shrugged. "Side effect of living around humans. You should see our teacher. Samra's even wearing jeans." Friend's brow furrowed. "Ipal aren't meant to be round." The conversation drifted as Ramira gestured to their sticker-covered canisters. "By the way, where's your canister?" "My what?" Friend asked, puzzled. "The canister," Ramira said, pointing toward the Cantina's drink shop. "Keeps drinks hot or cold." "It's called a canister," Friend frowned. "No, it's a thermos." No, Ramira giggled, tugging Friend by the hand. "It's a canister. Come on, we'll show you." As they walked, Tinley murmured behind them, "I don't like those bird people either. They say words wrong all the time." At the counter, Friend picked out a military green canister and moved to the coffee line. Dark roast flowed in a steady stream as Tinley watched with wide eyes. "Are you sure about that?" Tinley asked, eyeing the black coffee nervously. "That's strong. We can't even handle a sip." "It's all we get in the garrison," Friend said with a shrug, screwing the cap on tight. "Soul black or nothing." "You're hardcore," Tinley whispered, awestruck. Ramira poured herself a golden roast, dumping in half a cup of milk. "Is that part of some human warrior cult?" she teased. "No," Friend chuckled, tapping her card to the reader. "It's called 1600 Hours and running on fumes." Tinley let out a low whistle at the balance on Friend's card. "Human military pays well." "More like," Friend smirked. "I have nothing to spend it on." Ramira turned, a spark in her eyes. "I might have an idea where you can spend it. After all, you missed my birthday while you were gone, and all I got from the parents was a card." Friend laughed, shaking her head. "All right, let's go shopping." What Friend wasn't prepared for was just how relentless her sister was. Ramira tore through stores like a storm, piling up bags in both arms while Friend tried to keep pace. To her surprise, she found herself enjoying it, picking up lounge pants, a few sweaters, and even buying Tinley a Grimm-themed t-shirt when she noticed her lingering by a display. By the time they settled down for lunch, bags stacked at their feet, Friend was exhausted in a way the battlefield never made her. As Ramira dove into a mountain of saucy noodles and Tinley wrestled with chopsticks, Friend's slate chirped softly. She pulled it out, eyes narrowing. "Something wrong?" Ramira asked, a noodle slapping her nose as she slurped too hard. Friend frowned. "Looks like my meeting's been moved up." "The elders are on station." Tinley froze, chopsticks half raised. "Elders? Here?" "I'll send a ping when I'm done," Friend murmured, dumping her tray. "Hopefully this won't take long." As she turned to leave, Tinley raised a hand to her brow with a cheeky grin. "Ma'am." "Yes, ma'am." Rhaenyra let out a snort of laughter and promptly choked on her noodle. Fren smirked, her heart light as she walked away, but even then a tight knot of unease coiled in her chest. Some battles weren't fought with guns or grit. Some waited in quiet rooms behind heavy doors, and Fren knew those were often the hardest ones to win. The meeting room was suffocating. Fren sat stiffly in a narrow chair at a small table, a laughably inadequate barrier between herself and the long, polished table where 4 Yorel elders perched like judgment given form. The room was a pale cube of a space, lined with dark trim and sparsely decorated, its only features the chairs, the tables, and the thick closed door behind her. Fren's paws clenched into fists on her thighs, her spine straight and rigid. Her civilian clothes felt like a poor disguise. Without her uniform or rifle, without her rank stitched on her chest, she felt peeled open, vulnerable in a way that battle never made her feel. But she'd been summoned, no, ordered to report, and so she came. Kai Fren Yut, barked one of the male elders, his fur white streaked with black, his voice hard as stone. Stand before your elders in the correct posture, or have you become so infected by human ways that you've forgotten ours? Fren's jaw locked. Her heart pounded in her ears, and for a moment she wondered if she might snarl out loud. But then her gaze flicked to the far end of the room, to the grizzled Poe seated with casual poise, one brow lifted in wordless warning, a tiny nod. Just get it over with. Fren exhaled slowly through her nose, unclenched her fists, and lowered herself to the floor. Her knees pressed into the thin carpet, paws folded into fists against her chest as she leaned forward, nose touching the ground. A shameful, infuriating posture. Humans had never asked her to bow, never once made her press her snout to the floor. And here, in this tiny room light years away from Dagmar Prime, they demanded it as if she were some errant child. When she rose, her ears were tight against her skull, and she fought to keep the tremor out of her limbs as she retook her seat. "Corporal Fren," said Miss Reiki smoothly, her draconic fronds flicking as she leaned forward, data slate in hand. "May I call you Fren?" Fren swallowed, voice tight. "That's fine, Miss Reiki." The white-furred elder sneered, muttering something under his breath, but the Zamra beside him fixed him with a sharp glance, and the room stilled. "We have questions," continued Miss Reiki, her voice honey over steel. "The elders wish to understand the humans. There is concern." The white elder slammed his palm on the table. "Concern. Outright alarm. The humans are over-aggressive, over-militarized. There must be weakness hidden under that fury." Fren blinked in disbelief. "What?" she sputtered. "You think they're overcompensating because they're afraid?" "Exactly," the elder barked, jabbing a paw at the table. "No one sends entire fleets to a distress call unless they're terrified of being seen as weak." Fren let out a sharp, disbelieving laugh, shaking her head. "Number hell no. They love it. They love war." The room crackled with tension. The white elder half rose from his seat, but Miss Reiki and the Poe at the end exchanged a sharp look. His shoulders squared, hers tightening with authority. The elder sank back with a hiss. The tawny-furred elder leaned forward, his voice gentler. "There are some," he murmured, who believe the humans exaggerate their ferocity to frighten the other species, to maintain control. His eyes flicked over Fren. You've fought with them. Tell us, is it an act? Fren's chest tightened. Images flooded her mind. Grimy, blood-slick battlefields, humans screaming defiance into the dark, laughing as they charged forward, dragging her along when her legs failed, shielding her with their own bodies. She remembered their faces after, the weary smiles, the exhausted arms slung over her shoulders, the coffee shoved into her paws with a muttered, "You earned this." She looked up sharply. It's not an act. It's who they are. The white elder shot to his feet, snarling. Lies. No one can want war that badly. I'm not going to tell you a goddamn thing, Fren roared, slamming both paws on the table as she surged to her feet. Her chair crashed backward onto the floor, clattering across the room. Who are you to demand this of me? You made me bow as if I failed you. The humans treat me like one of them. They never once made me feel less. You send me to fight your wars, then call me Kai, like I'm filth. The room erupted into musk and flicking ears. Miss Reiki didn't flinch. The Poe's hand shot up, resting lightly on Fren's shoulder. Easy, Corporal, he murmured. If you touch them, no one can protect you. Fren's breath heaved. Her muscles trembled, caught between fury and restraint. Slowly, she dragged herself back a step, the anger licking through her like fire under her skin. Miss Ricky rose smoothly, her voice crisp. Elders, Band, and Uret, please leave the room. Now! The two most hostile elders sputtered, but under Miss Ricky's gaze and the Poe's measured stare, they retreated, shoulders hunched, tails lashing. Once the door hissed shut, Elder Trek, the purple-furred elder, circled forward and set a new chair in front of Fren. Sit, she said calmly. Fren hesitated, then lowered herself, the fire still banked hot in her chest. Tell us, Trek murmured, smoothing her robes, about the humans in combat. Fren's ears flicked. Why? So you can hide closer to Earth when the war wave hits. Trek gave a small, amused huff. Yes, but we're also here because you are here, and we've received interesting reports. Fren's eyes darted to Miss Ricky, who nodded. She exhaled. Humans come alive in battle, she said quietly. Not all of them are brave, but the ones who fight, they fight with everything. They don't just fight for themselves, they fight for you. When you earn your place, they don't see fur or fangs. You're just another soldier. You're one of them. Miss Reiki tapped gently at her slate. And how does that make you feel? Fren opened her mouth and paused. Her throat tightened. Faces flashed before her eyes, laughing, snarling, shouting, grinning through bloody teeth. I feel, she said slowly, like I'm one of them. Like I'm human. The room fell still. Why? Asked Elder Trek, her voice soft. Would you die as they would, for them? Without hesitation, Fren nodded. Yes. Why? A beat. Fren swallowed, eyes flicking between the remaining elders, to Miss Ricky, to the Poe. Because, she whispered, this is the path I walk now, the human path. When the call goes out, I arrive with thunder. Miss Ricky smiled faintly, sliding her slate into her bag. Thank you, Corporal Fren. That will be all. The elders stood, murmuring among themselves as they slipped toward a secondary room, leaving only Miss Riki and the Poe behind. As Fren exited, her heart thudded, not with fear, but with a sharp, cutting clarity. She was not longing for Dagmar Prime. She was not longing for her own kind. She missed her unit. She missed the humans. She missed home. Fren walked out of the meeting room like a soldier leaving the battlefield, body upright, gaze forward, but with something fractured inside. The station's hallway seemed too quiet, too sterile after the firestorm behind her. She could still feel the heat of her own voice echoing in her chest, the rage that had shaken her down to her claws. But more than that, there was the ache, not in her limbs, in her belonging. She had shouted down her own elders. She had refused their ancient rites, and it hadn't hurt because they scolded her. It hurt because it hadn't hurt at all. The anger had cooled, leaving behind a strange stillness, a hollow ring of realization. She didn't miss them. She didn't want to go back. Not to the soft forests of Dagmar Prime, not to the old language whispered in temples, not to the culture that now looked at her and saw something unclean, kawaii, corrupted by the humans. Her paws felt heavy as she made her way back toward the cantina, her pack slung over one shoulder, still filled with her shopping haul, sweaters and lounge pants she had bought, not because she needed them, but because they made her feel normal, part of the chaos and color of the station. But that normalcy now felt thin, transparent, somewhere between yelling at the elders and describing her brothers in arms with a voice cracking from memory. Something had broken open inside her, or maybe something had finally settled. She belonged to them now, to the humans. Back in the conference room, Mr. Ryson lit a cigarette, leaning against the table as if it had just witnessed a war. He took a long pull, exhaled slowly, and stared at the ember. She didn't even flinch when her elders humiliated her, he muttered. Didn't fold, didn't beg. Miss Riki sat quietly, her tail coiled around the leg of her chair, a cup of latte in her hands that she'd kept hidden for decorum's sake. Now she lifted it, taking a long sip. They've lost her, she said. She's gone. They're not going to get her back, Ryson replied, the smoke curling from his nose. She doesn't belong to them anymore. She belongs to Earth, to the fleet. Miss Riki tapped her slate, her eyes narrowing thoughtfully. Over 3,000 Yorel are inbound to human territories, seeking training, guidance, brotherhood. Renegades, Ryson said with quiet respect. Or maybe pilgrims. He turned to her, his look edged with irony. We took human lovers. We fought beside them. And even we don't talk like she does. What makes her different? Miss Riki tilted her head, thinking, maybe I was wrong. Maybe it's not just the pathokinesis, not just exposure or scent or psychology. She looked at her hands, then up at Ryson. Maybe it's the soul. The ever-elusive soul, Ryson echoed, as if the word were an ancient riddle. He took another drag from his cigarette and let the smoke trail from his lips like fog curling from a battlefield. The silence stretched between them, heavy but not uncomfortable. Miss Riki finally stood, brushing off her jacket, slinging her bag over her shoulder. She said she felt human, Ryson said quietly behind her, and I believed her. Miss Riki paused at the door, her hand resting on the frame. Then, without turning around, she raised one palm to the sky, fingers spread, an old gesture of thanks among their kind. "Maybe," she said softly. "She is." She stepped into the hallway and the door whispered closed behind her. Fren wasn't in the cantina anymore. She wasn't with her sister or Tynla or anyone else. She had walked to the edge of the promenade, stood there with her paws resting on the metal railing, and looked out through the station's viewport at the black sea of space. Her canister was warm in her hands, filled with soul-black coffee, no cream, no sugar. There, beyond the glass, Earth spun quietly in the distance, wreathed in cloud and light, and farther still she could see the glint of fleet ships stationed in orbit, her new home, her battalion, her place. She didn't need to touch her badge to know it was still there, tucked into her bag, the mark of her unit, the green of the warriors who had taught her what family could mean. Not blood, not birthright, but shared fury, shared fire, shared pain. A human once told her, "You can't choose where you're born, but you can choose where you belong." She took a sip from the canister and stared into the stars. The war wave was coming, and when the call came, she would arrive with thunder. She wasn't Fren the Yorl anymore. She was Fren, corporal of the United Human Forces, and she was not going back.